Hi, welcome to Mystic Chat episode 7, I believe. Divination is this week's topic, and I think, every single person on the panel today is a master divinator. um, Everyone here is very skilled, very talented, and it's interesting because I'm kind of excited because we're not necessarily we're going to teach people how to do divination per se, but we will teach you some secrets that will help you um, connect to the energies and learn at a faster rate and things like that. So but to start us off, I want to talk to Laura, and Laura's back with us. Yay! Laura, say hi.
Hi.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. Well, let's do introductions first of all before I forget. My name, of course, is Chris Allen, author, teacher, and a minister of the Fellowship of Phoenix. Laura, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit?
My name is Laura Gonzalez. I'm a priestess of the goddess. I'm a witch. I'm a pagan. I do a lot of telecommunications and services of pagan podcasts and videos and whatnot. And my profession, my job is I'm a professional healer, tarot reader, Reiki master teacher, etc. And I do a whole lot of other things, but I will bore you with that. But thank you. So, Luke, will you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name's Luke Babb. I use they, them pronouns. I am a devotional polytheist, which means that I work a lot with the Greek and Norse pantheons. I am I never think of myself as somebody who does divination, and then I realize that I've been doing divination for over a decade, long before I considered myself pagan, and that this is something that is so like normal for me. I don't even consider it doing magic, so I'm super excited to talk about it today. Ruby, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thank you. I'm Ruby Ruse. If you want to look me up in the chat, though, I'll come up as Amy Alice as well. But I am a YouTube artist. My YouTube channel is called Fairy Fortunes, and I also am a professional fortune teller. I tour around the United States doing different festivals and telling my own brand of divination, which I call Fairy Fortunes. So I'm really excited to talk about divination today.
Yay! All right. So, Laura, tell us a little bit about divination and how you see it and how you connect and things like that.
Well, as we were talking earlier, I believe there are two schools of thought, right? Like people who believe that you have to be born a psychic and that you have to have natural abilities and that those have to be presented naturally to you, and then you can go and use any media to do your divination, or no media. There are people that they're just channeling, or they just need to see you and they can start giving you a divination session. And then the other school of thought is that no, you can actually become a good divination channel person if you actually build the muscle. And if you ask me which one is the true one, my answer will be yes. I think both school of thought are as valid. I personally I believe that I was born with heightened psychic abilities. When you check a list of psychic abilities, I can check almost all of them, except for empath. I'm not an empath, thank you, goddess. But I do have smell and sense and seeing and hearing and dreams and whatnot. And I believe that, in my opinion, what works for me is the more you listen to that voice, the more you actually pay attention, the more you validate or confirm what comes to you, that voice gets louder and louder and louder. It looks different for everybody. You know, for some people it's dreams, for some people are visions, for some people is they hear something or they see something or they feel something or they know something. And I think it is not cookie cutter. It is different for each individual. And I believe that you can actually, like a muscle, build and exercise, and then it gets stronger. What worked for me as a child is I used to have visions. I could see the whole movie, and literally it was like seeing a movie on my mind. And then at 16 years old, I started using cards, and my visions evolve. I don't have visions anymore because now all I have to do is pull out the cards and I can put the story together. So I think it's really important that people understand how the divine or source, whatever you call it, talks to you. And what I have learned, something very peculiar, is when I'm not using any media and it's just a random thought that comes to my mind, the more unlikely the situation that comes to my mind, the more unlikely the scenario, the more for sure I know that is a message of something that's going to happen. So that's how it works for me. But of course, it probably works differently I'm pretty sure it works differently for everybody else.
Well, you know, that's interesting because, you know, I've been studying the different clairs, so like clairsentience, clairaudience, claircognizance. And one of the things I've been really thinking about is about how your psychic ability develops over time for different people. And I'm doing that because, like, for example, you know, when I teach my students and everything, one of the things I used to hate is when about anything is when someone goes, well, figure it out. Oh, I know, I need you to help me. That's why I'm asking you for help here. So, you know, I've been spending a whole lot of time trying to figure out how it works. And I've noticed a few different things. The first thing is your personality. So, for example, are you a doer? Because if you're a doer, you're probably one of those people who send energy better than receive. And however, if you're a person who daydreams a lot, I bet your clairvoyance is on point, you know. And so just like how we all learn differently and have a different proclivities, and I say proclivity because I hate the word for talent. It sounds elitist. I think that some of us gravitate towards things, like, for example, like I'm not one of those people who you can put behind a piano and I could just do a symphony. I need a coach, you know. Mm-hmm. But eventually I could do it. We all can do it, just like everybody else. Is that some people at different things have to try harder, you know.
I have to agree with you. I was listening to what Laura was saying too, and how she believes that kind of everyone is born with intuitive abilities, and like you were saying, we all have proclivities. I kind of think of just magic in general, intuition in general, as kind of a given of humanity. It's kind of, to me, like singing. Is that, for example, I have really high cheekbones and a very high forehead. So I've been designed, if you will, to be a soprano, which I am. And my family also was born with these kinds of features that kind of help resonate sound. And so, yes, my son can also sing. But if you think about it, everybody can sing. Everybody sings happy birthday. Everybody has that ability.
You know,
But
I'm
yes,
sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, but yes, you can practice and things and get better. And the reality is that some people are going to be opera singers and some people are not going to be.
You're not gonna believe me, Amy, because well, you probably will. The way I describe it to my students is, we all have vocal cords, we all can talk, we all can sing, and then you have Beyonce, right?
Yeah.
And Beyonce or Adele, and Beyonce and Adele are Beyonce and Adele. And if I practice and practice and practice and learn how to breathe and, learn how to project from the stomach and all that, maybe I can sing. But as you just nailed it on the head, we all can sing happy birthday. And going back to how you call them proclivities, I have chosen to call them abilities, from the simple fact that in Spanish, people call them a gift, el don. And to me, that is such a a grandiose, oh yeah, I have the gift. No, you don't have the gift. You have developed this ability. You have a natural talent perhaps, but that doesn't make it special. I think everybody has to a certain level, develop the ability, and
Well, it's interesting because that leads me into gatekeeping right there. And I hate gatekeeping. I hate everything about it. And just like I always say, there's a big difference between somebody who's practiced and has the experience to do a psychic ability and advance in magic. I mean, I'm ever going to take a beginner and say, here's how you conjure a demon. I would never do that. But if someone goes, hey, Chris, I want to call the Enochian angels, I will say, okay, well, let's teach you how to call the 4 elements first, and then we'll go there. But we'll get there because, I think that people, I also think that people are afraid of their own talents and their own abilities, and so I think that there are still some people who think that, oh, I'm not supposed to know this, or the other thing is, I only see bad things, meaning I only see crimes happen. I see murders happen. I actually had an acquaintance who had the ability to connect with the person who was committing a crime. However, it was a weird talent because she wasn't able to see who it is. And they can just see through their eyes at that very moment. It was very strange. So Amy, I want to hear a little bit about how your experience with working with fairies and divination at the same time, doing what you do with the fairy fortunes, and how the two blend.
Well, I mentioned that I created my own divination system. It's a cartomancy. It is with cards, but each of my cards, I have 16 cards in my system, and they feature 16 different fairies from around the world. And what I did is I was very careful about the energies of those fairies or those supernatural beings. For example, Populus the Penantes is from Greek mythology. They're actually kind of gods rather than fairies. They received worship and were prayed to, which they were recognized as gods. However, they were very much personal gods of the home. They created a safe space. It was you prayed to them for harmony. And so that when that fairy comes up in a reading, it's about homeward energy. It's about, enjoying your family. It's about partying, but it can also be about not wanting to take certain responsibilities, because the populace of Penantes loves like festivities, loves to have home parties and people running around and having a great time, but they don't necessarily like the cleanup that comes after that. And then the other energy that resonates with that is that they are so nurturing and embracing that they sometimes are not discerning about that. So that comes up in a reading. Depending on the reading, it could mean that the person needs to be careful about their focus and about their discernment. So
what do you think? What have the fairies? I've been dying to ask you. What do the fairies think about this a system that you created? Well, not by yourself. You work with the fairies, but what's their take on it? Do they enjoy it?
My opinion is they're thrilled, because actually it was created on a lark, to be honest. I was actually, before I became a full-time professional fortune teller, I actually was just a performer at fairy festivals. That's what I did. And one of the themes for the festival I was at was a journey through time. And I was like, what am I going to do with that? Because I had to come up with some shtick that had that theme. And I was like, well, I do fortune telling. do that, but I didn't want to use like my runes or my tarot cards, because tarot cards that's a lot of cards, and and runes were a little bit clumsy in this environment too. So I created this system of 16 fairies, and I thought it was just going to be this like quick joke thing that I did, but these cards worked for me better than any divination system I had ever used, ever.
Wow, that's awesome.
I've had the gift. I know Laura doesn't like that, and I don't like it either, but I grew up in a very psychic household. So psychic fortune telling was very much a part of my entire life from the time I was born. So when I started using these cards, I started like receiving critiques. This fairy isn't quite the right energy for this concept that you're trying to do. Why don't you look over here? And so then I redesigned the cards and changed some of the fairies that were in the original deck.
That's awesome. That is so cool.
They very much, and actually it was through the divination system. I had been working with the Fae. Actually, I was working with the Fae through Chris Allen as my teacher. So I had been working with the Fae, and I had always liked the idea of it when I was growing up, of supernatural beings. And I did work with supernatural beings in my youth, but I didn't know that they were the Fae, that they were the elves and other creatures. But it was really through the cards that they were like, yes, this is what you're supposed to do. We want you to do this. Come listen. And so one of the cards that I switched was actually, I then included the centaur in my deck, because I was actually using a different fairy creature originally for this particular concept. And the centaur was like, no, I want to work with you because this is the right energy for this card. Because that card, it's Conuncio, the centaur, is very much about being both and neither together. It's very much what the centaur is. And then having the intellectual powers with that wild side. And the centaur was very much like, no, this is my energy. This is where you need to place this. And I feel I went fully down the fairy woman path through this divination system that I kind of created as a one-time lark.
You know, that's really interesting that you basically said because you were able to connect with those energies and design these cards, you just embraced it. You're like, okay, so here it is. You know, so Laura and Luke, I want to ask you guys both this question too. I feel the exact same way personally. Like for me, as a pagan, I had to embrace it. As a witch, I had to embrace it. As a spirit walker, I had to embrace it. Like you have to like give yourself the okay to do it. So for you guys, my question is, how did you guys embrace it? How did you say, okay, this is what I do, and I'm not going to apologize for doing my ability?
I mean, I it it's interesting to me to sort of like engage with this idea that like some people don't, uh, because like I so the very first pagan space I was ever in, I was a freshman in college, and my exploring religions group ended up um, in somebody's field in Columbia, Missouri, for a Samhain rite. I have no idea where this was. I don't know the name of these people. I have not ever, like, I was not in contact with them. I just got in a bus. I got in a car. We drove 2 hours. We met up with a white van in a parking lot. And then we drove for another 15 minutes and ended up in somebody's field.
See, that's how sacrifices happen. Just so you know.
I know that. I
Go to
know
a
that now.
field on Samhain, who I don't know. Sure, and nobody knows I'm here.
I mean, it was me and a few other people, but yeah. And these really lovely people put up with all these like, and they were obviously like a fairly tight-knit coven that had been working together for a long time and knew each other really well. And then this like truck full of kids from college pull up and they're like, "Hey, tell us about paganism." And we went into the house, and one of the people, I believe it was the high priestess of the coven, was doing tarot readings. And I was like, oh yeah, I saw this on Touched by an Angel. Um, and I got a tarot read and like it worked. And I got a chance to like watch her give a couple of other people readings. And what really struck me about them was how connective they were, and how she was talking to these people in her community about things that they might not be able to talk about otherwise, right? Like I very clearly remember this reading for one of the people who was going through what sounded like a really nasty divorce,
Mm.
and was like dealing with some like really strong emotional issues around it, and like was struggling, and it didn't sound like they would have been able to talk about any of those things without the cards. um and like also the cards were offering insights and like working as ways of like giving good feedback and like understanding like where you're at emotionally. And I was just like, oh, so this is a real thing and a useful thing.
Mm.
And it's a skill that you can learn. Like, she's doing something. I could learn how to do something.
Mm.
um and so it was, I think, like 2 years after that, somebody gave my ex and me our first deck. It was a Rider Waite. He had no interest in it. It became my Rider Waite. um and like I had it for a while. And then at one point I was like, you know what? My friends are here. I'm a like give some readings with the little white book that comes in the Rider Waite deck.
I think we've all done that.
Yeah. Um,
Awesome.
and ended up like having these like really like, you need to break up with your boyfriend. This is a situation that I had no idea was happening, but are you cheating? Like that, like they're like, like very much, this is a useful skill. This is a skill that I can give to my friends. And also like, I should figure out what I'm doing before I do some unintentional damage. And it's just always been that way. So like when people are like, oh well, you have to knock 3 times on top of the deck, wrap it only in silk, and get it from your grandmother, like I don't.
Oh, don't.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. You know
well.
what? I would love to tell a story about that because I think this leads into a really great point about divination. I was at a festival doing readings, and a young woman came into my tent and asked for a reading. And she's like, I would really like to have a reading, but I'm really nervous because I break decks. And I was like, you break decks? And she explained to me that that people had told her that she had this powerful energy that messed up the energy of the decks and they couldn't read for her. And I was like, oh, honey, you know? And I was like, listen, I said, you can't break my deck. They're paper. I have 10 more duplicates in my drawer at home. Like, it's like, you can't break paper. And I said, I could tell your fortune on a deck of bicycle playing cards my cats barfed on. It's not about the deck. So, you know, it's not the tool.
Exactly.
You know, if you are a trained carpenter and your hammer breaks, you go out and you buy another hammer. You're not suddenly not a carpenter when your hammer breaks.
Can't build anymore if I don't have a hammer.
Well, you go out and you get another one, you know, like,
of course.
you're still a carpenter.
Yeah.
So, but when it comes to being, you know, I think with what you were saying, Luke, is that when you were doing these original readings, when you were having these experiences, it was the symbols on the card that were not only speaking to you, but they were speaking to the person that you were reading for. So I think that divination is very much like, it's like reading a book. You know, if the book is filled with alphabetic symbols, A, B, C, so on and so forth. But if you go through a book and you read out each symbol, it's not going to make any sense at all.
That's a good point.
You're not gonna understand the story if you're simply reading the symbols.
Mm-hmm.
And likewise, you don't necessarily need alphabetic symbols to be able to listen and to experience a story.
So,
You know, one time,
I'm going to take what you just said. I'm going to steal that. And I'm going to say, I'll give you credit, but I'm going to start to say, you know, here's how you read the cards. My friend Amy said, la, 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 la.
I have a video coming out very soon. So
well, I want to see that video.
Fairy Fortunes. It'll be up soon. It'll be on Fairy Women and Divination.
so going back to answering the question that you asked earlier, Chris, how did I embrace the psychic abilities?
Mm-hmm.
I was not given a choice.
Mm.
There was no choice of rejecting them. I'm from Mexico, like you all know. I'm a Mexican from Mexico. I was born in Mexico, and the lore in Mexico is that if you have a near-death experience, you come back with enhanced abilities. And I did have a near-death experience when I was like 2 or 3 years old. I choked with a chicken bone, and I was basically dead for, I don't know for how long, and then I came back. And so I do not remember a time of my life. I cannot remember a time of my life when I was not having some kind of psychic episode, knowing that somebody's at the door, somebody's calling on the phone, somebody got into an accident, somebody's coming to visit, so and so are dating, or they're seeing each other, somebody's cheating on each other. And I used to play this game with my sister. We will be on the window and see random people on the street, and my sister will say, tell me their story, and I will tell you the story of the person. And as a child, we thought I was very we thought I had this wild imagination, and I could just make stories for the people. And later I found out that it was my psychic ability, that I was actually telling you the actual story of the person. When I actually realized this is a psychic ability, can't escape it, like Amy, it runs in the family, but none of my family embraced it. My mom and dad did embrace it. My dad was a New Ager when being New Age was new. And so he embraced it, and he actually encouraged all of us to embrace all this type of things. But I'm the only one that ran crazy with it. And probably in my teenage years, that's when I asked myself, what's the point? So what? Why do I have these abilities for? And that's when I decided to start helping people. Like, look, let me share with people. And of course, I had mixed responses, right? Because when I have a friend with a dog, a pit bull, and I tell him your dog is going to attack you, his answer was, "F you, Laura. You don't know what you're talking about." And then next week he gets attacked by his dog, and then now it's like, it's your fault, Laura, because you're evil, And I'm like, no, you don't understand that I saw it before it happened. And so besides the point of rejection, fear, criticism, and plain bullying, I decided, you know what, if I have this ability, there has to be a reason, and the reason has to be to help people. So at a very young age, I, like I said, started using the cards, a bicycle deck actually, at 16, and doing readings with one that is called they're called Spanish cards because they come from Spain. And it's kind of like, it's almost like deck of cards for playing cards, but they also have people on them. Think about the bastard child from tarot deck and a playing card deck, not like a Lenormand, but something similar. And so I read with those for many, many years. And what I have learned since I have educated myself, right? Like, what are disabilities? What are all this? I don't have a premonition ability. I have a precognition ability. So I just know things. I don't feel them, but I know them. And like the guy from Game of Thrones, I drink and I know things. And so the nerd on me had to say that. So what I have learned, and something that you tapped earlier, Chris, and I wanted to expand on that, is a lot of people that have psychic abilities and they develop and they get stronger, they get very fearful about them because they think they're going to see terrible things. They're going to see when their loved ones are going to die. They're going to see when somebody's going to get sick. In my experience, and with all the psychic people that I have met, that is not the case. And I'm talking about personal knowledge here, not a scientific study. But I believe that the divine, God, Goddess, the universe, whatever you call this energy that allow us to see, I think it's an unwritten rule that you don't get to see what is going to personally affect you to that level. I never saw when my loved ones were going to get hurt. I didn't saw when my mom died. I didn't see when my stepson died. So there is no way, in my opinion, there is no way to see such terrible things that are going to affect you to such personal level. On the other hand, I almost never dated, or I dated very little, because I always knew when my boyfriends were cheating on me or when they were lying, because and I always know when people lie to me. people will come and tell me, oh, I couldn't come because I had to change a tire. And I'm like, no, I can clearly see you on the couch going, yeah, I'm not going to go. You know, it's nearly impossible for me to be lied to, which is not fun when you're young and you're dating. But I don't think that terrible, scary things and the thought that I'm going to see a terrible, scary thing if I build my psychic ability should be the reason why you don't work on it.
Yeah.
I think that, oh, go ahead, Blake.
I mean, I was just about to say that I think that kind of speaks to what you were saying earlier, Ruby. I think that kind of how you access divination depends on how you think it works. Like,
Yeah.
I think that, like, it sounds like Ruby's version of divination is very much about like relationship with specific spirits and how they show up in different like energies. And Laura's understanding of divination is like a way of taking all of this knowledge that I already have access to and putting them onto the page so I can look at them all in one place. And I mean, I have a very close friend who is a very good tarot reader who does not believe that they are doing any magic at all. They absolutely believe that they are like using symbols that we all sort of understand to have conversations with the people that they're reading for.
Yeah, I love that.
And
love it.
Right? It's wonderful. It works really well, and it refocuses everything into this like interpersonal like connection, which I think is where all the energy comes from. But you know, like it works for them. And like I have this really weird, if I'm doing a really good reading, and I'm like actually like figuring it out, I have this really weird experience where I sort of like zoom out from whatever it is that I'm looking at and into like a space that I have a very hard time describing. But I would probably call like the weft of weird in heathen understanding, where like I see how all of the things fit together and how they're working for this person.
Yeah. I'm excited because I'm like, you just put into words something I've been trying to describe. So yes. Please continue.
I mean, I just think I think that like maybe that's what we're all doing and we're all just experiencing it differently. Or like we're using the words from our practice that makes sense to us. I don't know. I love hearing about how other people are doing it though.
I have two things to add to that, kind of like piggyback to that. Quoting the great Aaron Marsh that you and I were quoting just last Monday, Chris, when he says, imagination is the way of the divine speaking to you, right? So I truly believe that we are clear. I don't know how to express it, so I'm going to say an example. For me, Laura, there is nothing, absolutely, there is no other symbol. Nothing is more sacred than this, a skull, right? There is absolutely nothing in the world that is more sacred than a skull. So when I see a skull in a divination, to me is rebirth and kind of like the card of death, right? Rebirth and life and death and the cycle and whatnot. And what happened if I'm doing a reading for a person that is very, say, Christian or Catholic, and then you have a skull and I will be like, oh my God, rebirth, this is awesome. And the person is like, oh, I'm gonna die. So when we do divination, my opinion, my personal opinion is the symbols are talking to me so I can give you the message. You know, because
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I think that's why people are so terrified of doing divination, because they have this idea that they're doing it wrong. And I agree exactly what you said, Laura. The symbols are talking to you. So if you're giving a reading and you the symbol is giving you information because that's how you understand that symbol, then that's the information that you should go with, because they're now your symbols.
Yep.
So I think that's, I have so many people in some other pagan groups I'm with, they're like, oh, I'm afraid of doing it wrong. And I'm like, I really don't feel like there is a way to do divination wrong. And I just love Luke's story where he was doing their first readings and had these really powerful connections because they were allowing those symbols to just speak to them and conveying that information and sharing that information with the person they were giving a reading for.
Yeah.
I think that people need to let the symbols speak to themselves.
Yeah. And like you were saying earlier about reading a book, I believe it or not, this is a true story. About 15 years ago, 20 years ago, I was working at a gas station and I was reading a book. And the person, I mean, you can tell I'm Mexican. I will never hide it. And my accent gives it away that I speak Spanish. So this person came and asked me, true story, I swear to Goddess, but do you understand the words in the book? Do you understand what the book says, or you're reading word by word? And I'm like, what will be the point of me holding a book and just reading random words if I don't understand the message? The same goes for divination. We all can learn, for example, on the tarot, that is a system in and of itself. We can all learn each symbol. But if you don't understand the 5 cards that are before you as a phrase that is conveying a message on its own, it's because you're getting on the way of your own ability. Yeah, you gotta have, like with tarot, I believe it's important that you have the symbol, the general meaning of the symbol, but then when you put it together, if you have a leg and a shoe and a stone, it could be you're gonna trip, or it could be you have a stone on your shoe that makes you uncomfortable, or it could be, guess what, you're gonna kick this rock and kick it to the universe. How you gonna tell the story? That's the important part.
And I think that sort of talks to your point earlier about like, we're all doing this thing that we all have sort of inherently as part of us as humans. Because I think that there's a big difference between like us, because we've been using tarot a lot here as like with language metaphors, like this is a language that we're using to communicate, or that we're using so that the universe can communicate to us more clearly. I think there's a big difference between, this is going to sound weird, give me a second and I'll make it make sense, a language and a technology, right? Like we can learn a language and speak with it and like use it to convey bigger ideas because the bigger ideas are something that we already know. Whereas like, I'm going to use your example, Chris, of the Enochians. I'm not going to go out there and just be like, I'll figure it out. I'll summon an Enochian. Because that requires like a specific magical technology. And there are ways to do it wrong. Like there are ways to do it very wrong. There are ways for it to go very poorly, is my understanding of that system. And so like the big difference, I know, I see you, and I'm going to give it to you just in a second.
I'm just going to say, because this also goes with gatekeeping. I am on a tangent with that today. This goes with gatekeeping. It's not so much if you do it wrong, you're going to have all hell break loose or piss them off. You won't be able to connect to the energies as strongly. And when that happens, just like in tarot, you can misinterpret something. For example, if you see death and you don't understand those energies, you can misinterpret that. One of the things I always say, and I'll be done, one of the things I always say is like, oh, in my tarot classes, what's your favorite card? For me, it's the Tower. Yay! And people are like, but it's the Tower. I'm like, I know, yay! But it's like, yay, get that old crap gone, So, anyway, the whole idea of connecting to the energies versus doing it incorrectly. Okay, I'll stop on that.
Well, and but I also think that's really useful because, like, I think that all of us are talking about connecting to the energies in different ways, and like that's part of that is why I don't use the runes as much, because the runes, I'm more familiar with the energies in the tarot. I'm more familiar with like the width of that language.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bunch of cards. They all mean a bunch of things. I can say pretty much anything with that kind of language, right? Whereas the runes, it's like talking to 26 specific people who are like very picky and have a whole bunch of things that they can say, but like require a lot more concerted study to I require a lot more concerted study to understand that language. And a lot of the time what I want to focus on instead is talking to you or the universe, not the symbol. That's my practice though.
Yeah, and I going back to the gatekeeping that Chris was talking about, I mean, definitely when I was using fairy energy to create a divination system, obviously I made mistakes, and so I had other fairies that said, nope, that's the wrong fairy.
Yep.
See this one over here,
I use this example when I teach ritual and spells, and people tried or they want to talk to a specific deity, right? And this, of course, Chris, you are the master in that, but the way I explain to people is if you are doing a ritual for love and you do it on a Tuesday because that's the day for Mars, and you want to do this love spell and you're really adamantly looking for love and you're going to do it for Mars, and all of us are like, what?
I mean, you're gonna get something.
I mean, you're not gonna get romantic love, because we know Mars is a god of war and Tuesday will probably not be the ideal day for love. But we know this, right? The person that don't know, and they're still trying their best. And I believe that the gods, the goddesses, the energies, the universe, whatever you call that energy out there, I don't think they're going to be like, really? Now I'm going to punish you for making such mistake. I think that two things can happen. I think that the first alternative will be that Mars goes, hey, Venus, girl, this is for you, but it got into my inbox here, right? The second thing that I think could happen is that Mars go, humans, here, let me help you. Let me steer you that way, away from the fighting one, I mean, I don't think there is such a wrong way of doing things, but there are learning curves and we're learning every day.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, and sort of to that point, like, again, some of the most intense readings I've ever done, I had no idea what I was doing. I was reading out of the little white book. I still do the Celtic cross incorrectly because I read it wrong the first time. And I was just like, this works for me. I guess this is how I do it now. And the first time I did it in front of a more experienced reader, they were like, what are you doing? None of that. Why did you lay them like that? And I was just like, because it's how you lay them.
But you know what are the most effective 4 magical words, right? You know them?
Because I do it?
No. You do you, boo.
I love it.
You do you, boo.
Yeah, and that goes back to some other things that we were talking about, is that, it's go ahead and be willing to make a mistake. Go ahead and be willing to learn and be willing to embrace your uniqueness. Because so many people are so afraid of doing divination wrong that they don't even try it.
I do remember. So when I first picked up the for cards, I did spells first for years and years and years before I picked up the cards. And I remember thinking, okay, I'm going to do it. So I took it was the Palladini tarot deck, which I loved and loved and loved. Um, and I remember how I learned was just like well, actually, I bought the kit that came. It was like $30, and you got the book with it and everything. And every day, I would do the Celtic Cross, whatever. And every day, I remember looking up the cards, looking up the cards, looking up the cards, and all that. And I was fine with that. The thing I was unsure of, and I was probably 22 at the time, I would shuffle the cards and think, am I shuffling wrong? And to this day, I get clients who ask me, am I shuffling wrong? I'm like, it doesn't matter. If I need, I if I need like exact stuff, because I was like, okay, I have to make a decision. I need very clear things. I would say, okay, spirits, okay, I need to know very clearly. And so I'll fan them out. And I'll do like what I call like psychic dowsing. I'll take my finger and I'll say, okay, draw me to the right cards and whatever I pick. And I trust that a lot. Um, and just for fun, and you'll do like a 7-card spread, like beginning to end. What's the path? This is the path. And then just for fun, I'll say I'm to the Celtic 10-card spread, and it always cracks me. Yeah, because I won't fan them. I'll just shuffle, and I always get the exact same cards, exactly, but just in a different order or whatever. And I would just like, see, this just proves that you can't really shuffle wrong. You can't. I mean, I do know what's hard is if you're doing it for yourself and you say, should I quit this job or should I take this new job opportunity? And you're hesitant because you're like, if I screw this up, I will say I can't really say too much about that because did I ever tell you guys how I became a massage therapist in the first place? I asked the Ouija board. I said, well, what should I do as a healer? And I was thinking I was going to say Reiki master, and it didn't. It said massage therapy. And that happened Samhain 2003. So
Wow.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
when I first became a therapist, I would never tell that story because you're like, Chris is already a whack job as it is. He's not making it worse. And now, like, I'll have executives at a hotel, at the Park Hyatt Hotel, say, so Chris, why'd you become a massage therapist? I'm like, I summoned the dead, and that's what they told me to do. And they're like, yeah, that sounds like Chris.
Going back to what you were saying, and no, I'm not shamelessly plugging my services as Tarot by Laura.
Hey, shamelessly plug away. Shamelessly
I have
do
already.
it.
But I rule of thumb, I recommend people not to read for themselves. For the simple fact that we are children and we want what we want. And so when I teach my students, I just tell them, if you're gonna pull one card a day or whatever, pull one card and stop. Don't shuffle and again. And true story, I'm gonna tell you, I love anecdotes. So I came from work, a 7-hour event, and I wanted to go see one of my performer artists friends. And I really wanted to go see them perform because they're amazing, but I was really, really tired. So I shuffle the cards and I pull one card and I say, I'm gonna do whatever you tell me to do. And what comes out is the 4 of Swords. 4 of Swords. And for those who don't know tarot, 4 of Swords is stay put, relax,
Take
chill,
a nap.
take a nap, don't go out. And I pulled the card and I kid you not, I'm like, what do you mean? Let me shuffle again. And then I get the 7 of coins, which is also a card of stay put, be patient, sit down, wait for things to happen. And I'm like, why suddenly I don't understand the tarot? Let me pull again. And I shuffle for a third time, and I kid you not, the tarot
Death.
was telling me, you know, because I promise you, I pull a 4 of swords again. And I stood home. The tarot,
Stay home. Stay home.
and I could probably keep pulling cards until I got the chariot, right? And and then okay, now it says it can go. So I think as effectively as we can do it for other people, and as effectively as professionals can do it for other people, unless we are really honest and very disciplined to do it for ourselves, we're biased, we have skin in the game, and we're always going to be looking for the answer that we want to have. We're human.
Or the opposite. Sometimes I've done things for myself, and I'll see something that's not that big of a deal. I'm like, oh my God, this is the worst card I could get. And then my friend was like, no, it's fine. No, you're seeing all the bad. It's fine.
I honestly think that it's tarot reading specifically, I think, is an act of like letting go of your ego. Um, I once, which I know that somewhere out there, some ceremonial magician is like screaming. But
if they watch this show, they're going to be screaming anyway. So.
But I definitely at one point saw somebody do a reading trying to talk to Odin, and like ask if something had gone well, and didn't like the answer. And kept going, like kept pulling cards. And I swear, watching it was like, you did fine, but you kind of fucked up and you didn't try that hard. Why are we still talking? Really, please stop. I will actually end you the tower. Like there were 7 cards and you could just see the conversation go. And like, the person was like, I've never seen a reading that bad. And I was like, I'm just going to start pouring some liquor into this bowl. Please don't mind me. Just continue with, actually, could you stop pulling cards?
Right, actually, please stop.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's the thing, because I disagree. When people ask me about how to start doing divination, I'm like, well, you should practice divination on yourself. That's the right answer. But I would advocate that whatever card you get is the card that you get, or the reading that you do is the reading that you do. Just read that reading and keep a record of it, keep a journal, write it down. And then, because as you're doing readings, you know, the thing of it is that they're not always unfallible. Like, read for hundreds of people when I do festivals. And sometimes they're fantastic, spot on. Like, I knew this one girl was allergic to pets and really wanted one, so I told her to get a lizard. And then she told me that her mother was getting her a lizard the next day. So, I mean, sometimes it happens. But other times it's like I gave a reading and the one guy looked at me and said, this means nothing to me. This is way off. And I'm like, whatever. You know, like, it is what it is. So I think that people have to recognize that divination isn't the end all be all. Sometimes you're going to be spot on and sometimes you're going to be way off. And that's
correct.
So I do think that people should do readings for themselves, not just for learning, but like, I don't know about you, Laura, but I do have on my Facebook page, I do a daily reading. And occasionally I do pull different cards because I'll be like, I just pulled that card 2 days ago. I don't want to do the same card. So I'll pull another card just to give public something different. But, you know, mostly I just tell the story of the card, and then you just keep a record of it, and then you see how far along you are, how close you are, and how far off you are. But it's also an exercise of perspective.
Yeah. And I think you know, having the message and telling the message to the person, and when the person says, this is not for me, this doesn't match what I'm doing, at the moment, my experience has been, at the moment they're like, you way off, you're way off. And then they call me 2 weeks later like, oh my God, Laura, da, 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 da. So, and plus it's not for everybody, there are people who are adamantly not believers, and you can tell them, you're gonna twist an ankle when you leave the house, and they twist the ankle and they're like, oh, she made it happen, or oh, what a coincidence, but it has nothing to do with what she told me. So it varies from, each head is a world, we say in Spanish, cada cabeza es un mundo. Each person is a whole entire world. And I also believe that when we do like you and I that do videos and do this stuff for the public, if you see the video today and today that message don't resonate with you, and then you next week or 2 or 5 years it comes to your memories and you listen to it, and that's the day that message is like, oh, and the divinator probably pulled that message a year ago. It is so random.
I also think that, divination is a way to tell a story. So sometimes stories have these epic meanings to us. And then sometimes they're just great stories. Like, for me, The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho was life-changing. It changed my life. And it's a fictional story. But for other people, they read the book and go, yeah, I really like that story. And that's all they get from it. And I think that that's what divination is too.
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
Yeah, sometimes it's going to be epic, and sometimes it's just like, oh, well, that was fun. And if it is, that's all it is.
And like with everything,
he's asking for questions. Oh,
I ask if we're going to open for questions. And like everything in the world, everything with measure is the healthier, right? And in my personal practice, as much as I love to have people be my clients, I think we have to be careful for those who do it professionally, not to allow the person to become addicted to the divination.
Agreed.
It is to me ethically, it is really important that a person don't come every other day. So now what? So give me a card. So, I think that a healthy time between readings is a healthy, ethical thing. But that is kind of like my code of ethics as a healer and a priestess and all that. So to each their own, but it could become addictive.
Absolutely. All right. So we went past the hour, which is great conversation. I love it when this happens, and it always happens. So, all right. So, thank you for joining us today, and we will stop the recording and opening up for questions.